I call to order this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on May 17, 2023 at 7 p.m. I am Linda Lukovsky, Chair of the School Committee. I want to welcome everybody here tonight, and just a reminder, this meeting is being audio and video recorded. I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families in a wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners. Students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? First, I would like to welcome back Paul, Caitlin, and Narissa. Congratulations on your elections. And I just would want to say that I went to the 10% banquet last night, and that's always an amazing event to go to because it just shows how talented our students are. And when they select the teacher to speak for them, they're amazing. We have amazing teachers in this district as well. And then myself and Narissa was part of the civics panel, so it was great to see the 8th graders come out with questions that we weren't expecting them to ask, but it was great to see that they're empowering them to ask questions, tough questions too. The next item is Student of the Month, and I'm going to hand that to Erin.
Good evening. The Student of the Month program was established in 2019 by the school committee to honor exemplary students. Nominations are collected throughout the year from staff members at all 5 schools. Nominations are made through the following categories: service to fellow students, teachers, or community, dedication, determination, and persistence in the face of obstacles, attitude towards learning, determination, high achievement in academics, athletics, or performing arts, and significant improvement in academics, athletics, or performing arts. The selections are made by the chair of the school committee, the superintendent, and 1 member of the policy and advocacy subcommittee. The school committee really loves this segment of our meeting agenda, and we really do appreciate the parents and the families and the teachers that nominate all the students and then come to participate at our meetings that we have to honor them. I would like to invite Mrs. Benson to come up and tell us about Ren Levitt, the May 2023 Student of the Month.
Okay, no worries. Hi. Social intelligence is a person's ability to interact with others, whereas emotional intelligence is a person's ability to recognize one's own feelings and other people's feelings. Ren is gifted in both. Throughout this past year, I've traveled between 3 elementary schools, grades K through 6, and have taught close to 1,000 students. I love my job. However, there was always one little girl who stood out to me when I'd make my visits to Miss Jacobson's kindergarten classroom. This girl is Ren. No matter the environment I was given to teach, sometimes over 60 kindergartners in one room, or in a smaller room, Ren's eyes would always lock on mine. When a question was asked, her hand would shoot up. When chosen to speak, her thoughts and insights continued to blow me away. How can a 6-year-old think so conceptually? How can a 6-year-old be able to see multiple perspectives and offer such mature solutions and insights? There are adults that could not have come to her conclusions. I also have the pleasure of visiting students during their lunch period. When I'd enter the cafeteria, Ren would always greet me with a huge smile and ask, when is our next SEL lesson? And will Twiggle be there? Twiggle's our little turtle puppet. Whether in the classroom, lunchroom, hallways, or out at recess, she follows the expected behaviors and rules. Recently, I entered her classroom a few minutes early, and there was a boy there crying. I went over to him, and he told me he was sad because he missed his dad who was on a trip. Ren rushed over to the boy, put her arm around him, and told him, "It's okay to be sad. I understand how you feel." She modeled empathy and did not want to leave his side until he felt better. Ren is truly special. I had a few opportunities to speak with her teacher, Ms. Jacobson. When I suggested nominating Ren for Student of the Month, Ms. Jacobson's eyes lit up, and she without hesitation said, "Please do." She told me that Ren was always the student who followed the rules, was kind and patient, and knew how to read the room. If two teachers were talking, Ren would pick up on social cues by standing nearby and wait for her turn. I've been in my profession for 19 years, and I can say that Ren is truly gifted in her social and emotional intelligence. She is my biggest SEL supporter and champion, and I'm ready to hire her as my assistant when she's ready. Her smile, enthusiasm, and good heart is one to truly recognize and celebrate. Thank you so much for selecting her.
Your work's not done yet. I would like everybody to take a picture that you would like to have.
Oh, sure. Do you want to get the picture? Oh, yeah.
Whoever you would like to have in the picture. Hey, Bernie. With the permission of the committee, I would like to move the student presentation on recycling composting up on the agenda to be respectful of the students' time. Are there any objections? Thank you. I would like to welcome Juliana Cogliani, Maren McGee, and Jane Mayette. I understand that this was initiated as part of your 8th grade civics project and that you have a presentation.
Ladies, that was comment was for them, not you. Go ahead.
Okay. Recycling and compost systems at Triton. Hello, our names are Juliana, Maren, and Jane, and we're 8th graders at Triton Middle School. As 8th graders, part of our curriculum is to participate in a civics engagement project where we reflect on our communities and try to make a positive difference in them. We've decided our project goal is getting recycling and composting systems installed throughout the district. If the system is installed and maintained, together we can reduce Triton's carbon footprint and prevent unnecessary waste from polluting our communities.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay,
Still going?
so recycling. As middle school students, we have observed the amount of waste that is being generated each day firsthand. If Triton recycled, it would reduce down greenhouse gases by cutting down the mining and producing of new raw materials, teach students responsibility, save money because recycling is cheaper alternative to trash disposal, and it would help us stand out. Other schools in the area, including Newburyport and Pentucket, already recycle. Let's catch up and work together to help the earth. Studies show that 80% of school waste is recyclable.
Composting. Composting is the natural process of recycling organic matter so that it can decompose naturally and be turned into fertile soil. When organic matter is not composed, it is being put into landfills or incinerators. In landfills, organic waste decomposes under the trash where it rots and releases methane. When it is burned in an incinerator, it also releases large amounts of methane. By separating food waste from trash, it can be brought to a composting facility and decomposed naturally in only 3 to 4 months. And the good news is that composting actually removes carbon from the atmosphere. The United States Environmental Protection Agency stated that methane is more than 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. Studies show that 50% of school waste is compostable. Why compost at Triton? Compost removes carbon from the atmosphere. It empowers students to take action in protecting the planet. Not only that, but it is a perfect hands-on science lesson. Compost also creates fertilizer that can be used to grow grass, plants, and trees. A big benefit is that it reduces rodent and insect problems. Lastly, it spotlights the school for taking strides towards zero waste.
Making recycling and compost a reality at Triton. As a Massachusetts school district, we are eligible to register for the Green Team, which is a Massachusetts-run program that offers materials for schools wanting to start recycling and composting. Green Team members can apply for free equipment while the supplies last. If the Green Team does not approve our request for free equipment, we will need funding for recycling and compost bins, as well as wheeling carts and transportation of recycling and compost to facilities. In addition, we believe that the most effective way to ensure that recycling and composting are happening is to make it a district-wide policy that each school cafeteria has a compost bin that is utilized, and each classroom has a recycling bin available. All 3 elementary schools have a recycling system in place, which is managed by the school's student councils. However, the middle/high school building has yet to resume the program. In the middle and high schools, recycling collection could be run on a volunteer basis, or they could adopt the system the elementary school uses, and the student council members could collect recycling once a week. In the middle school, students could volunteer to collect recycling during their flex block, and in the high school, students could make their rounds during a study period. As for the compost, it would need to be emptied daily. We have contacted the head custodians of each school in the district to see if emptying the composting bins at the end of the day along with the trash bins is doable, and explained that our hopes were not to burden them with more work.
Concerns we have about recycling and composting. We want recycling and composting to be a positive change for everyone involved. However, we have some concerns that we have yet to work out, including students purposely recycling and composting the wrong types of waste, burdening the custodians and lunch monitors with more work, and creating additional expenses for the district.
In conclusion, we think that having a policy mandating recycling and composting would be a positive improvement to the Triton district, decreasing the amount of methane Triton produces, teaching students responsibility, and shedding light on the school for being greener.
Thank you, girls. Very well done. Is there any questions for any of the... I think it's a great question to ask the middle and high school for them to continue to compost like the other 3 elementaries. Have anything?
I don't have questions because I think there's a second piece to this puzzle, which Kyle is going to chime in on. I thought. Ryan said.
I can talk my thoughts and let me know if you'd like to add. So this is something we've been looking into as well. The elements to the puzzle are just like you described here. And then the challenges, I like how you detailed those out as well, because we actually met with an outside vendor who would collect compost materials for us. And they said that one of the most important pieces is that the composting isn't contaminated, and that involves engaging all students and staff to make sure we have that commitment that there isn't the intentional putting of trash into the composting materials. So if we have an ability to monitor the bins, then we could definitely take those next steps. Yeah, were there some pieces you had? So we'll continue to look at this. Like I said, we met with that outside vendor, the Triton Education Foundation. We met with them as well, and they were super interested in the process. They had, well, not specifically earmarking funds for composting. They said they would absolutely be up for that. So we have that revenue stream as well, so we could defer any costs that would otherwise go to the district. So we're moving in the right direction. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Nice job, ladies.
Thanks.
I had one interesting fact. What? Just one interesting fact that was, on Monday, when the USDA and Project Red were here, I was talking to the representative, one of the aides for Senator Warren, and she told me that they are actually incentivizing composting programs in the United States because most of our fertilizer comes from Russia, and it's actually considered a national security concern. So, yes. So she told me that Black Earth is in for $1.6 million to redo their facilities. And they're going to be in the process of doing that and creating, I guess they create a pit with radiant heat built into it to help speed the composting process so that local sources can help generate more natural fertilizer from the composting process. So I just thought that was interesting.
Ladies, you don't have to stay if you want to, but by all means, please do. The next item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains no donations tonight. It does include the final planning approval for the Costa Rica Spanish immersion trip in July. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And I'm going to ask, with the permission of the committee, that I would like to move the World Language Resource recommendation up in the agenda to be respectful of Mrs. Simon's time. Are there any objections? Thank you.
Thank you, Regina, for coming. So Regina is the program coordinator for World Languages, and ever since the adoption of the latest framework has just really dove into them head-on, done an inordinate amount of professional learning on her own about them before bringing this back to her department, and has been leading her department through unpacking the frameworks and really developing their own vision of what world language instruction should be like, and then led them through this resource recommendation process. So she's here to share that process with you.
It's World Language Framework, Curriculum Framework, thank you. And this is the first new curriculum framework that we have had since 1999. So we are very excited about this. The guiding principles involve all students. The main concept is that all students can learn to speak a world language. There is a focus on social justice and language proficiency, and in the last few years, we have piloted the STAMP proficiency tests each year. As the years go on, we have more and more students graduating with the Seal of Biliteracy, which provides them with an opportunity to receive up to 12 college credits, if they have the seal with distinction. The levels of proficiency, this is a small set of posters that you see in every world language classroom, developed by one of our very talented Spanish teachers, Jessica Casasa. And the levels of proficiency, beginning at the middle school level, are novice low. By the end of 8th grade, we expect students to be at the novice mid-level. novice high at the end of ninth grade, intermediate low at the end of 10th grade, intermediate mid at the end of 11th, and ideally, according to the Massachusetts World Language Frameworks, we would like our students to be at intermediate high and achieve the seal of biliteracy by the end of 12th grade. This requires a large number of hours. We continue to advocate to re-implement the 7th grade program and perhaps even bring the study of language down to 6th grade and maybe later on into the elementary schools. In the last 3 years, as we have been working on curriculum alignment labs through the Department of Education that the Department of Education has provided with us, we've been working on aligning our curriculum to the framework. We submitted our first units to the Department of Education, and they were approved. We did a Spanish unit on leisure and a French unit on leisure. We are recommending unanimously that we pilot in the 9th grade next year a new set of textbooks that is by Vista Higher Learning. Senderos is the Spanish textbook, and Chemin is the French textbook. This is the first year that we would be ordering and requesting textbooks in over 16 years. So we are long overdue for a new set of textbook series, and most of our teachers have more than 3 preparations each day. So having a full set of ancillary materials along with the textbooks and a full online program that connects with Google Classroom, where the Vista Higher Learning professionals have already selected authentic texts that we will have at our fingertips. We recommend this. I think that you have our recommendation in your files, and we're very, very excited about it. We have already begun to use this at the upper level. In 2011, the College Board created a new French and Spanish language and culture exam, and in about, I think, 2016, we ordered the Vista Higher Learning AP program, TEM and TEMAS. So what we have discovered is that it aligns fully with the world language curriculum, and we would like our lower levels to align more effectively as well. We really think the students will love it, and we see a lot of potential for improvement.
Does anybody have any questions? Bless you.
So thank you very much for this presentation. I just had a couple of questions. One of them is, it seems from the document like it's a phased implementation. Is that correct? So it's, I heard you say that the upper grades are already using it. This says grade 9, so is it can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Originally, what we were thinking about was doing a backwards rollout, and then we decided to start moving up. The middle school, I think, eventually will jump on board. Patrick Kelly, I believe, has requested this pilot in his budget for this year, and we decided we would start from the ground up. It is the larger numbers, of course, in the 9th grade, and so this would pilot in the 9th grade, and then the following year we'd begin rolling it up at the high school. So we're very excited about this opportunity, and we think that the kids will be, and you will be as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Narissa, can I just hop in on that
Yeah.
too? So just that the middle school is fully committed to this program as well and this process, and have been part of the process. Al did include this in his first budget proposal, and then this was one of the items that was eliminated during that budget process. So just waiting for the funds, and they'll be right in on it too.
And Doug Dunbar and Mary Kerwin were on this committee along with us as well. And Becky Kelly also worked with us while she was with us.
Thank you. That answers that question. Can you talk a little bit about, I know you mentioned textbooks, supplementary materials, and an online component. Can you just talk a little bit about how those work together? And I guess, I know often we'll have recurring costs for some, whereas others are a one-time purchase. Just kind of what that looks like.
Yes. The ancillary materials, it's an online super site with Vista Higher Learning that we currently use at the AP levels. And they have a lot of wonderful features. One of them, of course, is authentic videos of French speakers and Spanish speakers from all around the world. Different accents, different languages, different cultural settings. So we love the videos. We love the fact that they're all there already so that we don't have to be researching those as we're doing the units. They're right there. There's also a really nice feature where students can interact with one another online and create a video. So they might have a set of questions about what their favorite activities are. And it will be 6 to 10 questions, and they'll sit, and perhaps Andrew and I would be, well, Andrew, what's your favorite thing to do in the afternoon after school? And
and I would respond in the correct Spanish phrase, which would be whatever that would be.
So, and so the kids enjoy this because it's interactive and it's really fun for the teachers to watch and to listen to, and it gives them the practice that they need in a real-life setting, whether they're in a French or Spanish-speaking country or whether they're taking the proficiency exam to earn the seal of biliteracy. So that's one of the features. There are also authentic audio recordings, and there is a feature where they can write and teachers can edit directly on the program, and then they can keep track of it as the years go on. So the AP students have been successful. The scores have improved since we began using Vista Higher Learning, and we expect to see that at the lower levels as well.
I don't know. I'm sure you've got the money side of it, just so that we're aware of kind of what's recurring.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look back on this because we originally requested a 6-year quote. It's more cost-effective to do the 6-year of licenses, but it's also sometimes not within our budget. So there are times when we pay a higher annual rate, but just for 1 or 2 years. So I just need to confirm. I know that initially we were looking at the 6-year license and then the textbooks to support, which wouldn't need to be replaced.
Okay, thank you. And I feel like I had one more question, but I've forgotten what it is, so thank you.
While you're thinking, can I ask a couple? So the textbook is a physical book that we would be issuing and collecting back. It's not an online version?
Could you repeat that question?
Is the text something that they'll be able to pull up on their Chromebook? Or is it a physical book that they'd be carrying?
We will have the books themselves, and then on the Vista Higher Learning website, they can pull up the ebook or they have a v-text or an ebook, and you can just pull it up. And it's also nice for teachers because while we're in class, often we'll be using the hard copies, but we can project whatever we're working on and whatever that page number is so that the kids can look along with us as we're turning the page or doing a reading. And also, it's great for the kids so they don't have to carry the books home in those big backpacks that are bigger than them sometimes.
Can you speak a little bit about what it was about this program as compared to the other ones that were being reviewed and why the choice was to make this over the others?
Yes. The New World Language Frameworks revolve much more around proficiency and the path to proficiency, reaching intermediate high. So most of the activities are focused around interpersonal conversation, interpersonal writing, as well as speaking. So you might, it's just much more up to date than the one that we're currently using. They may have an email, and students have to respond to the email. Rather than an old-fashioned business letter, it will be an email. So it's that interpersonal conversation that they would be using in everyday life, interpersonal writing. And then so the three modes of communication are interpersonal, interpretive. The interpretive is interpretive listening and interpretive reading, as well as interpreting a video. So they might watch a video and then have some questions to respond to on that. So it really revolves around the three modes of communication: interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. So it would be presentational speaking as well as presentational writing. And it also, the themes thematically focus a little bit more on social justice. So you might take a theme like the environment. They're also prepared around the 6 themes for AP at the pre-AP level, so that they're topics that students, I believe, are really engaged in. They're real-world topics, families and communities, global challenges, contemporary life. There are six themes. Science and technology, so they might be talking about artificial intelligence. And the other is in search of oneself and one's own public and personal identity, as well as linguistic identities in the French and Spanish-speaking world. So I hope that answers.
Can you, Anna, maybe potentially speak about the other curriculum that was being looked at all?
So what was I was actually not leading this process. Regina was leading this process. But I know you were looking at 2, and that this one, I think sometimes it's easier when we already have one too, and you've experienced it, and you know the alignment with the standards. But what was the second one?
The other was by EMC Paradigm, and it was Descubre and Découvert. We had one of the things that really kind of tipped us in the direction of VHL was not only our familiarity with the program already, but we did have our vendor for New England come in, and she brought somebody in from North Carolina to do a presentation for us. We also had somebody from EMC Paradigm come in, and Janice Kovac actually tried a pilot in one of her classes a few years ago with Descubre, and she found it a little bit more difficult to work with, a little bit, just in terms of reading and having kids interact. We are very fortunate to have the networks that we have with teachers today with the internet. We have a French Teachers in the U.S. Facebook page and a Spanish Teachers in the U.S. as well Facebook page. So believe it or not, when I go to a convention, a few years ago I was in Martinique, and I was walking down the street to go to a workshop, and somebody was running behind me because we were just running a little bit late. And I said, "Oh, are you going to this workshop?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, what's your name?" She said, "Nathalie." I said, "Oh, Nathalie Gorey from Maine?" She said, "Yes, what's your name?" I said, "Regina." She said, "Oh, Regina Simons from Massachusetts." And there we were in Martinique, and we know each other from working online. So a lot of this comes from our conventions, but it's also collaboration nationwide to make sure that those things that we are selecting are being selected by others and teachers that we respect and admire. And so we really feel very confident in this choice. And I would be happy to share a more formal presentation at any time if you needed that.
And I'll say with a lot of the new curriculum adoptions, they're all, particularly those aligned with the new standards, that you can find that they're all aligned with the new standards, that they're all sort of meeting these higher levels of student engagement now. And it really is about finding the right fit for our students. So we're working through that in a couple different sort of curriculum groups right now. They're all green on ed reports, but that doesn't mean that it's green for us. So I'm confident. I'm confident with Regina leading this process, and we've been working together throughout it in terms of making sure that we follow the guidelines for our own resource adoption, but that they've fully explored these and found, and lots of times it comes down to usability, like both of these may be aligned to the standards, but which one is going to be best for our students here and our teachers.
And we did create a checklist of things that we were looking for in our textbooks, and we sat down with them and compared and went through the checklist. So I have a whole folder if you're ever interested in seeing, the process and those things that we did in order to make the decision. But we really are looking, AATF will be meeting in Quebec this summer in Trois-Rivières, and I look forward to running into lots of the teachers that I do know from our collaboration. And there's a new Facebook page, and it's called Chemin, for teachers who are implementing the new textbook Chemin, and some that have already started, and things that they're liking, things that they're not. So we're not alone in the process.
I remembered my question, which was time frame on this. Is this a fall implementation?
Yes, that's what we hope.
Thank you.
And Patrick said that once we present at school committee, we can talk about setting up a time in the summer to make sure that the orders are placed and that they come in before the beginning of the school year so that we're ready to go.
With each new program, there's supports. Is there supports that go with, if you have questions or?
Yes, we did ask M.A. Mansfield, who's the program coordinator for special ed, to kind of join in on our committee, and we shared some of that with her. And so they do have differentiated learning. So, for example, if you were giving a test, for example, in one of my classes, I have a combined CP and honors, and we're teaching the same curriculum, but when I give tests and quizzes, I will differentiate through the actual online program so that the CP students have the word banks and supports that they need, and the honor students will have something that's more advanced.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that some of those students that are able to have that dual, bilingual?
Seal of biliteracy?
Yes, the seal of biliteracy, sorry. I just want to make sure that there's supports for them to be able to achieve that goal.
Yes, yes, and I think that especially with the new frameworks, that being that the first guiding principle is that all students can learn a world language. It's really important. That's a really important piece. And so thanks for asking that question.
And I want to thank you. I know how passionate you are about world
Can I ask one?
language. Oh, yes, go ahead, Paul.
But I thought yours was, with the books coming in over the summer, is there PD or anything else that is necessary for teachers to pick this up, or is it more or less what they've been using enough that?
We have been working on this for a few years, and so we had the person who came in from North Carolina did a demo for us to show us how it worked. And of course, Jen Scott and I think, may have an easier time adapting to it because we've been using it at the AP level, and the super site at the AP level is set up in the same way as the earlier levels, but it's really quite user-friendly.
And I do have PD funds for additional initial professional learning, but I've really found that in first year of implementation of something, the most benefit is sort of the collaborative learning time that we continually to offer, so that the World Language Department hopefully will be able to continue to work together as they are implementing in year one on their professional development days.
I want to thank you for your time, and I know you're passionate about this, so I appreciate all the work that you did to come up with this program for our students.
Thank you, and thank you all so very much for your support of world languages so often over the years. And another time, I'll have kids come and talk to you about their wonderful experience in France, and hopefully soon in Costa Rica as well.
And we have a motion to approve the adoption of resources to support the implementation of the Massachusetts World Languages Curriculum Framework in grades 7 through 12.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, Mr. Simons.
Thank you.
No, I'm going to do it. Oops. The next item is oral communications from the public. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee? Yep, you can just come up to that. Just state your name and the town that you're from, please.
I'm from Newbury. My name's Elizabeth Novak, and I'm sure you know my name at this point. I'm calling, or not calling, I've called all day, in regards to, I'm trying to register my daughter for kindergarten. And the proof of residency was changed this year to include asking for the deed to my house, which one I think is absurd. That's neither here nor there. If you really want the deed, it's public record. Whatever, have at it. But you also request both deed to my house and a proof of paying off my mortgage. My financial standing and the ownership of my home is absolutely none of the school's concern. And I'm very upset and distraught about the fact that you even asked for it, for one thing. Two, I'm not going to get into it here because it's not the time or place. But I have a home that's been in my family for generations, and it's logistically not necessarily possible to do all of this. So I would like to just voice my frustration that everybody just keeps saying, nope, this is the policy, this is the policy, this is the policy. There's no meeting anywhere one halfway or talking about a gray zone. When I talked to the superintendent's office, they said it was on you guys. When I spoke to you guys, said it was to talk to the superintendent, and I understand he's out. I will speak to him when he gets back. But I want to understand why you need this when it doesn't actually even prove residency of my standing.
Thank you. We have to wait for the superintendent to come back. It is policy. And in the policy, it states that if the superintendent feels it's necessary, he can waive the requirement, but it has to be whatever's in the policy. So when the superintendent comes back, he will get in touch with you.
Okay, so there won't be any discussion about why this is in place?
So we legally cannot have a discussion. As a public body, we have to post any items that are intended to be discussed at the meeting at least 48 hours in advance publicly. So we have an agenda that was actually posted last Friday. I think it was Friday, well outside the 48-hour posting window, and that's what we have to follow tonight. So we can't have a discussion that's not on the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Is our student representative report. Our student representative, Andrew Doherty, is now going to provide us with his report.
Hi, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. I'd first like to start off with just an update on the bathroom situation here at Triton High School. So as many of you are aware, this year especially has been very troublesome for the activity caused by some students in the bathrooms. It has led to several cases of vandalism, cases of students being caught with illicit substances, and it's just a real problem that doesn't belong in a school. So a lot of parents and students have voiced their concern, and administration previously took the steps to address this issue by closing some bathrooms and providing administrators outside the bathrooms to monitor the activity. And I'd just like to voice what I've heard from students and from some parents in response to that. A lot of people were initially upset as they saw it as an inconvenience, but after a while they understand that sometimes tough love is needed to solve issues like this. Although it's not the most favorable conditions, well, for one, vandalism has gone down in the bathrooms, so I guess you can say that's a start. But you always have to start somewhere, and as the time continues, more bathrooms have been opened, more teachers have been monitoring, and I believe the situation is getting better, but there's always room for improvement. I've heard there's been talks about implementing what Mr. Kelly used as vape detectors in the bathrooms. I'm not sure about their effectiveness, but this is something that could be very advantageous for the administration to stop the use of substances and keep our children safe. So I'd just like to thank the administration for taking these measures and showing that they're trying to do something about it, because it really is an issue. Because I've heard students having to waste 15 minutes waiting for a spot in the bathroom when they can be in their class learning. They have to get out from their test. It's just an interruption that's not needed in the school day. But like I said, we have to start somewhere, and I'm glad we're taking the steps now. Moving on, recently I was able to attend a mental health conference with some students in the local congressional district, District 6 to be specific. And it was set up by our Congressman Seth Moulton, as he's currently writing a mental health bill to our Congress about an advocacy for more mental health funds for public schools and veterans. And we students shared the different policies in our schools for dealing with mental health, and it was really eye-opening to see what we have and what we don't have in regards to mental health policies. I understand that a lot of districts and schools are different and they have different needs, but the main issue I saw was the inconsistency between all these schools. And I understand this is not a Triton issue, this is a nationwide issue, but I feel like as a district, we have taken some steps, but we should strive to maintain this push to advocating for mental health, especially after the COVID wave, such as the anxiety managers at the elementary schools that we talked about previously. But when we went through the numbers of the conference, it's just really sad to hear how it has to sometimes get to the point of suicide prevention with our students through the mental health screenings. And I feel like as a district, we should take more steps to make sure that our students are being heard, the issues are being met, and I just like to say that's a concern that I've heard from students and staff as we continue into next year. On the more brighter side, as we near towards the end of the year, the junior prom is this Friday and the senior prom is on May 30th, and these students are very excited to celebrate their accomplishments this year. And it's a good way to end a very hectic year But other than that, the sports teams are doing well. The boys lacrosse team and the tennis team won their senior nights, and especially for the seniors, it's a good way to end their year off on a high note. And I'd like to share that the Culture Club is hosting an LGBTQ+ potluck for the Triton District. It'll be hosted in the high school cafeteria next week on Tuesday from 5 to 7 p.m. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anybody have any questions for Andrew?
Hey, Andy, did you hear anything at your conference that you thought might be something good for us to explore implementing in our school that maybe potentially you could share with us?
I sure did. So, like I said, a lot of these schools, they were comprised of mostly public schools, but some private schools, so obviously the funding's different. Especially, like, say, one student there was from Essex Tech, and their school especially receives funding for mental health advocacy policy. But one of the policies I heard that was really beneficial was no homework over break, and allowing students to actually, like, take advantage of the break period, not so much an extension of school, but to be with their family, their friends, to decompress, so when they come back, they're fully ready to re-engage in their learning. Another policy I heard that went really well was, or one policy I shared from here was our encouragement for students to make connections with with teachers, like people to turn to, resource, not just guidance, but people they can talk to. And that wasn't a policy or a push shared by many of the students there. And I think the breaks on homework and work over break, especially for the classes that sometimes require it, trying to find ways to allow students to decompress, because the more we push, the higher chance for anxiety to develop within our students. But yeah, I felt like that was the greatest policy I heard.
So thank you for this, Andrew. I guess when we do conferences, one of the things we usually do is, because you do, anytime you go, you hear some great things, right? That you're like, oh man, I wish you could do that. The three people to your left, typically what we've done is we make sure that we funnel that information through. So if we go out and, hear something great about professional development, I'm dropping Anna an email and just saying like, hey, this is, something that I learned that another district is doing and it's fantastic. So I would just encourage, like, if you're hearing wonderful things, funnel it back in, because by the time it gets to us, it's, typically pretty far along in the fact-finding process of what exactly is going on here. Obviously we're seeing it's coming through as presentations. So I would just say, anything that you're finding would be great. And I'm going to double check on the homework policy, because I thought, other than APs, unless it was assigned well before vacation or had a due date after vacation, that homework could not be assigned over vacations. That's my memory of the homework policy. I couldn't Google it real quick here. But I believe it can't be like assigned on a Friday and due the Monday that you come back. Anna's nodding, so.
We definitely should that. I think we need to revisit sort of that, check in on implementation of that as well. I know we did, right after the policy was adopted, we did a survey of students right after, and I feel like it would be good to do another one.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to thank you too. I'm curious, I know you said kind of the reaction is changing on bathrooms. Do you feel like, I know obviously this is kind of like a drastic measure that's easing off. Do you feel like there's kind of an understanding here that things need to change to go back to essentially the way they were before?
Yeah, I feel for the most part, like, if you're a person engaging those activities in the bathroom and this policy meant to stop that occurs, you're going to be the loudest voice to be advocating against for that change. But for the students like myself who like to use the bathroom with the lights on, without people surrounding you, doing things they're not supposed to be doing, I feel like the conditions we're in now are hard. It's not the greatest condition to have to walk 15 minutes and like waste that time using the bathroom, but if it allows for me to use the bathroom safely and responsibly, I feel like that's a sacrifice students have to make. And I feel like as time continues, students are understanding that yes, it's annoying, but it's for our own safety, our own well-being, and hopefully eventually students will understand what a bathroom is supposed to look like, how they're supposed to behave in a bathroom, not doing things they're not supposed to be doing in there. And I feel like this is a great first step into ensuring that we get back to what we consider normal before the way it is now.
I thank you for saying that. It's really encouraging to hear that sentiment. And then also just wanted to share that over the summer, we'll be completing significant work on the bathrooms in terms of putting up in partitions between the urinals, as well as repairing some of the damage that had occurred over the last year. So hopefully, even moving towards next year, that'll be a nice reset as well for visually to see those bathrooms in better standing.
That'd be a great change, and especially it's a pride factor for students. Like, this is our school, we don't want to see that. Like, even when teachers say like I would they wouldn't use the bathroom there. Like, it was especially demoralizing last year when I know the effect to stop that was to pay teachers who are already working in the school to monitor in their free period, and they refused. The offer wasn't taken up so greatly, and it hurts because this is our school. I don't want to see the bathroom like that. I don't want like visiting schools and my parents like when they come here to see it like that, because we're better than that. But I feel like these policies will allow us to use and have bathrooms that look like they're supposed to look, not what they're not supposed to look like. But I'm really happy that we're moving in the right direction.
Kyle, can I just ask, as part of that, he had mentioned vape detectors. Is that any part of the plan, or?
Yeah, so we've received one of the vape detectors. It's paired as a pilot almost, so we can test it, see how it works, and then also from a technology, it doesn't have the ability to integrate with our camera system, not that we would have a camera in the bathroom, but by design, that vape detector, if it has a camera outside the bathroom so that it could see who walks out. That doesn't integrate with our larger camera system, so we're looking into options to see how we can pair the two together on a larger scale, but we do have one to pilot to start.
I know we've been using that, and it's worked very well. We've similarly piloted it. Brand name Triton, come to that. But it's at least cut down that one bathroom has changed, so that's good.
Sorry. Andrew, can I just clarify? I thought I initially heard you say that before the changes, it was a lengthy bathroom wait, and then when you kind of restated it, then I heard you say that it was lengthy waits after the bathroom changes. Could you clarify? I know one of the high school emails we saw said that it was like, a 15-second wait maximum. So I don't know if that's changed. I guess that's where my curiosity is.
Yeah, to clarify, so at first when the policy started, I believe the only two bathrooms open were the ones outside the library. And since you have like 10 kids waiting for 3 bathrooms, that's when the traffic would occur. But when they opened the bathrooms upstairs the following week, that's when the traffic slowed down and the time was reduced to much more convenient times for students.
Okay, so right now you're not seeing significant waits?
No.
Is that my understanding? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. The next item is new business. Would any members like to raise items for inclusion on a future agenda? The next item is election of officers. At the first full committee meeting following the May elections, the board must elect a slate of officers for the next year, including a chair, vice chair, and a secretary. Last meeting, we went around the table and discussed which members were eligible and would be willing to serve. I can go through each of those officer positions, pulling the information from the last meeting's minutes. And then we'll take a motion to nominate a member the member could choose to decline the nomination or let it be seconded. If the motion is seconded, we will have a vote. If the vote passes, the member will assume that officer role effective immediately. Are there any questions on the process? For the chair, I know a lot of people had, yielded to other people. And I know that being on school committee, that it takes up a lot of time, and having a position as one of the officers, it takes up even more time. So I don't want anybody to get the idea that people don't want to do it. It's, some people have more time than others. So for the chair, nobody wanted the chair. So I said that I'm eligible and I'm willing to serve. So,
Do you want me to nominate you?
Second.
I nominate Linda Lukovsky for chair.
can I get a motion to nominate a chairperson for the coming year?
I'll make a motion to nominate Linda for chair for the upcoming year.
Second.
Are there anybody else that would like to nominate somebody?
You have to let the vote go through. Yeah, you can't just
skip it.
You can't just do that now.
This is a really good effort.
Is there any discussion?
Thank you so much, Linda.
All those in favor?
Thank you, Linda. I believe that's an 8-1 vote.
I appreciate your confidence, and I appreciate, I'm the servant of the committee, so. The next item is for vice chair. Caitlin is, of course, the eligible, since she's currently vice chair and is willing to serve, but also said that she would yield to others. Erin said that she is willing to serve, but would yield to others. Narissa is eligible and is willing to serve if the committee wishes it. Can I get a motion to nominate a vice chair for the coming year? I nominate Narissa.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Is there any other nominations? All those in favor? For secretary, Paul Mayette is currently serving in the position and happy to continue. Caitlin is willing to serve but will yield to others. Erin is eligible and willing but will also yield to others. Can I get a motion to nominate a secretary for the coming year?
I'll nominate Paul Mayette.
I second it. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Can I just say, I like how this used to be like very calm and orderly, and now it's like people fleeing from the door, and the last person left here.
That was last year. This one, you specifically said you would take it.
Well,
So see, that's the change.
there you go. And thank you, Linda, for taking that on again, because it is a huge amount of time that's required. So I appreciate all of your sacrifices of your work time and your family time and your leisure time that will be taken up in the coming year.
I appreciate it. The next item is subcommittee assignments. Each year, the subcommittees are also reorganized, and the members have the chance to change where they serve. I will try to take into consideration member preferences as much as I can, though we also have logistical concerns with potential ethics conflicts and personal work conditions. Please send me your first, second, and third preferences in order of what you would prefer, and any reasons why you cannot serve on a particular subcommittee by Friday, June 2nd, and I will bring a proposal to the next meeting for a vote. Also, if you are interested in serving as a liaison for the CPAC in the coming year, please include that in your email as well. Is there any questions on that? The next item is the proposed meeting schedule, 2023-2024. The proposed schedule for the coming year of the meetings is attached to the agenda. Does anyone have any concerns about the schedule? If not, can I have a motion to approve this calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed meeting schedule for the school committee for the coming 2023-2024 school year, which is based on the current year meeting schedule.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the school committee goals update. I've attached the goals the committee set in the fall for this year. The first one was about capital planning for this campus, and I believe we have satisfied that goal with repeating the SOI submission. And then we had one for funding the stabilization account and sticking to our financial reserve policy. The second goal is a multi-year goal about building a stronger sense of the Triton community. At the January school committee workshop, Susanna and Paul Goldner volunteered to research what data had already been collected and where the gaps were that still need to be explored. Susanna is going to go through their findings.
Anna, did you bring this? This was the printout. Just sorry, it wasn't attached to the agenda. The vocals, just a high-level view of the vocals.
I did not bring it, but I can pull it up on my...
Oh, that's great. It's fine. We can share it, but I'll talk through it anyway, so it's
Would you
fine.
be able
So-
to send that out to the full committee?
Yes, yeah. It's just the survey that we'll be talking about tonight. And it just highlights kind of the key dimensions and the topics that would be surveyed to the student population. So that's really what it is. It's not the specific questions. That's a really lengthy, I don't know how big the pieces of paper were, right, to print out, but it's certainly something that we should put the link into our shared site of resources to take a look at so you can get a good understanding. So. But yes, as you mentioned, following up from our January workshop, we took back the conclusion from that, and that was that rather than create a survey ourselves, we would be looking for something that had been created, preferably in the public domain. And we would start that approach by using that survey to first study the student population. So we wanted... I think Anna had brought up, as she said, the vocals. We looked at the 40 assets as well, and we looked at some other surveys that you could, I would say, not procure from other, there's something called Panorama or something like that. We looked at their questions just to kind of get a broad understanding of what they were asking. So the criteria is we wanted something that was well validated. They had a documented research methodology, and they had a user guide so that when we go out to administer this, or it's actually already being administered by DESE, that we would be able to interpret the data appropriately. So we know that when the question is being asked about cultural competency or engagement around that, we know what they mean by that, by the responses. So the survey that we're talking about is called Views of Climate and Learning Survey. It is administered, it's an annual survey administered by DESE, and students that choose to participate, so it's voluntary, it's not mandatory, correct? Yep. Obviously, there would have to be notification to parents, caregivers, et cetera, before it went out to certain grades to ensure that, they had that information that they could be surveyed. And so the students, they're asked questions and views on 3 dimensions and 9 topics. So those dimensions include engagement, safety, and environment. I can go into each one of them if you want, but for example, engagement around cultural competence. The questions focus around the extent students feel students value diversity, manage dynamics of differences, and avoid stereotypes. Engagement as it relates to relationships, the extent students feel there is a social connection and respect between staff, teachers, and students, and between students and their peers. Participation, again, as it relates to engagement, the extent students feel engaged intellectually, emotionally, and behaviorally in classrooms, and the extent that students or their parents are engaged in school life. So that is encouraging. That includes also parents and caregivers as well. In terms of safety, there are 3 main areas of topics. Emotional safety, so the extent students feel a bond to the school, where we were sort of looking for, questions around the sense of belonging, inclusivity, et cetera, but focused around safety, which was quite interesting, and the extent adult students support the emotional needs of students. Physical safety, that certainly came up, the extent that students feel physically safe within their school environment. Bullying and cyberbullying, so the extent that students report different types of bullying behaviors occurring in the school and the extent that the school staff students try to counteract that bullying. And then lastly, environment, the environment dimension, which includes instructional environment. So this relates to whether or not students feel like it's collaborative, relevant, and challenging and supportive to their learning. The mental health environment, so do students have access to support systems that effectively support their social, emotional, and mental health well-being? And then lastly, discipline environment, the extent that discipline is fair, applied consistently and evenly, and shared responsibility among staff, teachers, and students. So it's pretty extensive, and I think it takes about 20 minutes or so. That's what it says in the user guide for students to do. So I've pulled out some information and try and answer as much as we can collectively. But one of the things that also stood out to us was that this is administered, created, on state level through DESE. And so the survey uses the same or similar definitions and categories of student groups as they do with MCAS. So we're able to stratify the data by percent low income, percent high needs, percent students with disabilities, all student groups, percent English learners, non-English speakers. I forget the actual terminology of that, but that's the level of kind of stratification you can do. It also captures students' gender identification, which we didn't see in any other survey. So obviously male, female, but also includes non-binary. And again, so it kind of indicates to us a very current kind of, instrument that has been developed, taking into sort of consideration of that language. The survey is typically given out after MCAS, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the administration, some of the considerations we'd have to take in for that. And it's given out to 4th, 5th, 8th, and 10th graders, so it's not the entire student population, but those grades that obviously yield enough as they feel sample enough to get kind of, the overall arching objectives of views of climate and learning, etc. Saying that the questions, the language is modified appropriately for age groups, right? So you're not going to ask, the questionnaire is not going to ask the 4th grader the same level of question to a 10th grader if it around harassment, for example. Some of the questions around harassment, it would use different language appropriate to that age group. So just as some of those concerns come up. What else have I written? It is collected anonymously. However, we do have to have students, we have to have a sample size greater than 10 by those student groups I just mentioned, so that, we can't, if there's a small number in a school in a grade 4th level, for example, and just hypothetically, of non-English speakers learners, if there was like 3, obviously you could identify them. So you have to have 10 or more students to reply to those questions. So that's something to consider, and I'll let sort of Paul talk about that a little bit, especially with regards to race and ethnicity, because that's something that we need information about, but some we can't because of the small population that we have. The data typically becomes available in the fall. We'll talk a little bit again of kind of how that comes through the MCAS platform or the DESE platform where you get the MCAS. I'll leave that to Anna to go through. In terms of rolling this out, we were thinking of 2024. We do need to provide students and their parents, caregivers, etc., notification that this would be coming out. So I believe 10th grade has gone ahead and that notification was sent out, but we would be looking at being able to administer this for 4th, 5th, and 8th. And it wouldn't be until 2024. We have just missed the date of MCAS rolled out over the last couple of weeks and into this week, when we would see the 8th graders typically take this survey. So some of the logistics we'd have to consider, but that said, the data would be readily available probably that following fall of 24, which is good because we know that some of their information, and it's also publicly available, I think, right, to some extent. whereas the 40 assets, I think, is not shareable. I don't know if that's a word, but we can't disseminate that information per se. I think there's some
So they're actually they've just scheduled the public share of the Search Institute's 40 assets data for June 6th of this year. So after that, it's fair game to talk about. But they like to have the students sort of share it with the community first. And it's certainly, we're late on that due to a number of different factors. But they're presenting in June the survey data from 2022. So we're actually be administering the Search Institute survey again this coming fall.
Does anybody have any? Go ahead.
Do you know if there's one of the classification groups that's too small to be able to collect data on, or at least report out on it? Will they lump that data into a larger group so that we still get the responses? Or will it just be something that we will not get at all?
So from what I've read and what I've seen and looked at it, you can collect it at all student level. So it aggregates. And I probably should have said this too, but there's a lot to, it's a big questionnaire, right? So each one of those categories that we're talking about, or those dimensions, you can roll up into an index score. So you get it on the aggregate level, and then you can then split it up against, those different categories, demographic categories, and as well at the student level. So you'll be able to look at, okay, what if you have a safety index score for the school, you can compare it for your elementary schools, individual schools, your middle school, your high school, and you can compare it to the state as well. And you can compare it on the aggregate level, and then you also have your questions, each individual question that belongs into that domain that rolls up to that index score. You can also see the results on that level too. So if there's something that stands out, so students with disabilities, for example, we saw something stand out in terms of participation of activities. That would be something where you could, cross-reference and see that, if that would be. That kind of gives you the ability, but yeah, you can see the data in aggregate so that you're not missing any vital or key information.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I'm just going to say one of the other things that we talked about is that with the questions that they have in the breakout, there is actionable information for the building principals in terms of school improvement plans and the budget requests in January that they would put forward, because the questions do get down into our students. Are you seeing understanding? Are students being taught for understanding or being taught for grades? Is there a focus on the learning or the grades? Do they have opportunities to take the upper level courses? Breaking out how teachers are explaining questions within the classes. Some of that information is contained there, and you can see it by some of these breakout groups. So I think there is workable information quickly, as well as to the greater sense of, do students feel like they belong in the school?
I want to thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I know I'm on your right, you never see me. So 2 questions. For other districts that are doing this already, do we have any idea what participation rates look like for them?
My guess is they're high, and I'm speaking just from my daughter came home, took her 4th grade MCAS today, and said I had to answer all these questions after it, which was the survey. But my guess is that they don't have the same policy that we do about informing parents, because I received no information from the school district about it. So we can certainly look into that and see who's doing it. It did push through directly onto. Without us adding it, it pushed through as a session onto our MCAS platform. So we had to tell people not to open that session because we didn't have time to communicate with families.
Gotcha, that makes sense, okay. Other than, obviously there were some specific grades that wouldn't be sampled as part of this, what other gaps did you identify in data that's gathered that I guess is not gathered that you feel like might be needed? or wanted?
I mean, I thought it was very extensive, and the questions were very relevant into something that has been tested too. Like, so the amount, oh.
I think it's just your mic. Do you want mine? I think because it was
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to like the other questionnaires that we looked at. I mean, they were really much more academically focused, and also really focused on the context of belonging really around, and culture really around sort of racial and ethnic backgrounds versus, really more talking about, I'm sorry we don't have all the questions for you guys to see, but definitely take a look into them. You'll see that they're pretty extensive into like participation and to why you wouldn't, be participating into certain groups, after school activities as well, that was included, which as well as in the classroom, outside of the classroom, which as long as it was on, part of the school community. So, yeah, I felt.
Okay, thank you. And I guess just going back to the idea that this is limited on who it gathers data from, did you, and I mean, I can't, not seeing the data, like, did you feel like there's a concern that you're missing really before 4th grade and after 10th grade, and I guess as they're entering high school, or is the data homogeneous enough, I guess, across grades that you feel like it could almost be applied K through 12?
It was interesting. On the on one of the asset survey, there was one grade where we could see that there was something weird in that grade on one topic. But other than that, it was pretty smooth across what we were looking at. I also, with 4th, 5th, 8th, and 10th, you're hitting every building, and you're going to see those same grades over a period of years. You'll see them again and see if you're happy, but you'll also have the opportunity to see, oh, this grade looks significantly different than that grade as they come through. I would love to survey more grades, but I don't know that it would be practical, and I think with what we saw, at least not practical right now with what's available, and I think with what we saw, we can fill in those gaps over a period of a couple of years.
Yeah, to your point, one of the areas that we kind of discussed with this is, an ongoing activity so that we can start to trend information. To Paul's point about you're not going to hit every grade, but we would be able to see, swings if there were. We certainly saw that with MCAS. So, like we would sort of follow it. I think we can compare back to the state up to 2019, maybe a little bit before. So, there's value for that, and also to try and tie it as much as we can to what we're seeing in the 40 assets as well, right? So that's more around supports, et cetera, but we could see, this at least kind of gives us some of that information around attitudes towards their climate, feelings of belonging, et cetera.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for your work on this.
Is there a way for Triton to come up with a similar survey for the grades that aren't taking it? Where you could have some of those same questions being, given by Triton, and then you can compare them to the state, I guess.
I think we could, given that we have all of the questions on each one of those, and we could modify them per grade level. I'm confident our director of technology could create something that would disaggregate that data for us.
Yeah, this way they could just possibly all take it at the same time. Well, when those MCAS, you have the grades that aren't taking MCAS.
Yeah, and I think a challenge in the timing of MCAS too is you're asking students who have just finished session either their second MCAS or their third, because it's after the science, technology, and engineering in 5 and 8. How do they feel about school engagement after they've been on a computer for hours? So
Right.
I would think, though, that any data that we get back, similar to getting like the higher level MCAS data back, that this is a starting point. And I would look at results and then say, where do we need to dig deeper? Can we pull a focus group together that includes students of multiple grade levels, and then hear from them directly, and then kind of use this as the beginning and not the end?
Yeah, because this was, I think we considered this as a multi-year goal anyways, so. And I appreciate all your time, and yours too, Anna, on this. I mean, this is at least a great starting point, so that at least we, and the benefit of having it done for MCAS, during MCAS, you'll probably capture a lot of students that way as well. Does anybody else have any other questions? So 10th grade is being administered this year, correct?
Today, yes.
Okay, so at least we started with a grade. So at least we have a little check mark in our goals this year. Thank you.
Can I just ask, does it make sense to look at 40 assets, given that it'll be available soon, prior to looking at the MCAS data that's available in the fall? Or do you think that, I'm just, for the chair's purposes, trying to figure out where it makes sense to put it on an agenda next, because we usually, in the past, have kind of had this running list.
Right.
So what was the question? Should,
It's, so I believe you said 40 assets is coming available in June, that their
Yeah.
data would be available in June, but the MCAS data wouldn't be available until the fall. My question was, I guess, does it make sense to look at the 40 assets data in the nearer term, right? And then, I don't know what fall means, whether that's September or November, but, and then look at the MCAS data separately, just so that it, like, we have to make sure it makes it on the agenda.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, and we actually have the full report from the Search Institute. Like, we have it, it's just not, they ask that it's a public share by the students. So it wouldn't be something that could be discussed in this venue, but it has been shared amongst like school educators.
Okay.
Just to that point, though, just to note, the caveat, though, is that data's lagged, right? That 40 assets data is quite lagged compared to, whereas our MCAS is only a couple of months difference, so when you're, if you're trying to sort of look at relationships potentially between all the different data sets, you have to take that into consideration, that was administered, probably, 1 year post-COVID, so different to what hopefully we'd see 2 years later, 3 years later.
Right. Okay. So we'll look at when we should have that on the agenda. The next item is the public use of school fields grounds. Last meeting, the superintendent reported on issues with people using school grounds and fields during the school day or during school events in ways that either raised safety concerns or created issues with student use. The committee agreed that signage would be an appropriate measure to take to address this. Kyle Warren, the Director of Finance and Operation, has provided mock-ups of potential signage, and we'll talk through where they would be used.
Thank you kindly. All right, so the attachments, there's 2 different attachments here. The first one where it has 6 different mock-ups. To summarize the options here, I guess we look at the first row versus the second row. When we met with an outside vendor who specializes in creating these types of signs, we walked the campus as well as the stadium, received her recommendations. So the first row is the idea is these signs would go on the fencing surrounding the stadium. That's why you see the words at the top, campus facilities, versus on the bottom row, it's titled school campus. The language themselves are consistent in all three columns. The options there for column 1, 2, and 3 are going to be the formatting of those signs. The first one is in all black lettering. The second middle row is going to have the red closed to the public in the red font there to draw more attention to it. And then in the final column to the right there, you can see there's the notice sign at the top. Wanted to get the committee's opinion on each of those rows there to see what your thoughts are on balancing, providing notice to the public without being too abrasive, for better words. We don't want somebody, I mean, hopefully they read the signs, but not just to think the school campuses are closed for everyone. The goal here is really to alleviate the challenges Linda mentioned with the public utilizing primarily the stadium during the day when classes are in session and those conflicts that arise. Also, on the bottom of each one, it says police take notice. That's essential so that the police can enforce that policy that we have in place. And then the bottom row, the final element I want to share is the three on the bottom row. The idea is those would be included on a sign, a pole at the entrance of the school campus. So you have the signage there when you enter, and then the rest of the signage would be on the stadium fencing. Thoughts on the different options there? All black lettering, some red, notice sign.
I like the bottom row. I don't think it's aggressive. In design, I know that's a concern, but I don't think having notice in blue with white lettering is not overly aggressive. It's actually part of the Triton colors. And it's kind of like marketing-wise, you are entering a Triton campus in kind of subliminal messaging. But, you know, coming from Salisbury, Linda can attest, we have signage up for cars not passing a certain point, and the red might be necessary, to put it rather politely. Like, we had a car today that just blew past all the signs, all the parents, and tried to take a right into the dog park trail. And so I would say, I would go with the most notice school campus red lettering, because people who want to go somewhere tend to tunnel vision to their destination.
And I will share the far right there with the notice sign. It was the recommendation of the outside vendor who specializes in this type of signage. The notice formatting and that coloring is consistent with Department of Transportation.
We can't add lights or anything?
Pardon?
We can't add lights?
Some flair and pizzazz, perhaps?
Just, you know, like some LED lights around it to really draw attention.
I'm sure if we asked.
No, I really appreciate this, though. I think it will cut down, at least to people that may just be unaware that it's, I know that sounds silly, but people, I tend to be walking and not really focusing on where they're entering and what the potential cause could be for a school campus. So I like that we're posting it and we're, you know, giving the public an ability to understand that it's a problem for us.
Excellent. And then the last piece, so is that the shared sentiment?
Yeah.
Yeah. The second, oh, go ahead, yeah.
Sorry, I may have missed this because I had to make a quick trip to the bathroom. But was this run by the police department just to get their feedback on it, or?
We will absolutely do that.
Okay.
Thank you for mentioning it.
I was going to ask about the attorney. Like, did we run it by our legal?
We can do that as well. We can do that as well. The outside vendor specializes in these types of things, but doesn't, as Brian says, belt and suspenders approach there. So happy to do that. Thank you for mentioning it.
Can we post one in the back driveway coming in, because I keep seeing people come the wrong way?
Do not enter sign?
Yeah, and it's one of these as well.
So the idea too was we can have an initial inventory of these signs, place them out, and then they'll have it on file so we can have them print even more if we need to. Because just as you're describing it, initially it was in the stadium area, but then also on the softball field and in that area as well when folks are parking so that they can see it there. Absolutely. Get the message home, right? The second piece to it, in the other attachment, is a no dogs or pets allowed at any time. The recommendation of the vendor was, well, we had some options, but this would be a separate sign at the bottom of the other sign that says no dogs or pets allowed at any time. We felt that that was a good approach to
I
the
like that
signage.
one.
Right. So because we do have a significant issue too with dog waste in the stadium as well as on the campus, so.
Carl?
Yep.
So does this exclude like service dogs?
Legally, I believe it would have to, but perfect reason why we will be running this by the police department and our legal outside counsel. Thank you.
Might need to add that, I think that needs to be added.
On the
like,
except for
on
service.
the sign.
I follow.
Yeah, I think it's
but I'm
service
not sure.
animals. It's
Yeah,
the-
it says, it would say like no dogs or pets allowed at any time, and then underneath, like something along the lines of service animals welcome. Or if you, I know you like the positive spin, but service animals welcome or
For sure.
something to that extent.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on, because we can change the wording around as necessary? And if, after we follow up with the police department and the attorneys, if there are any material changes to the signs, we would definitely bring this back to you, but.
And this is just for the middle school, high school campus?
For
go-
now, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
so
say, is there a possibility for it to go
There is,
throughout Triton?
yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not sure the definition of service dog. I know that there was, at some of the other schools, the therapy dogs, and talk of that here. I don't know if that would have to be accounted for separately than service dog or not, but just something to consider.
A service dog has to provide a function for its handler, and then an emotional support animal still provides a service, but it doesn't provide a function.
And I think the main goal of these signs too is to provide leverage for the scenarios when folks become combative, and 99% of our residents who enjoy these facilities have no, if we mention to them, hey, we have class going on right now, would you mind coming back another time? They'll say yes. It's when it goes the other way. This one.
Do you need the police take notice on the dog sign in order for it to be enforceable?
So this is an attachment to the sign.
Does that count?
I can make sure we get an answer on that.
I know that's weird, but.
Yeah, it's technically all one sign, two components to it, but we can confirm that.
Any other requests, changes?
I appreciate the direction. Thank you.
The next item is the school start times. This item is a follow-up from a new business item raised by Paul Goldner at the April meeting. Since this would be a significant time investment on the superintendent's part, I wanted to have a quick discussion with committee members before officially requesting that he begin this work, to make sure that this is the will of the committee. By way of history, we have explored later school start times in the past for secondary students and decided against changes at the superintendent's recommendation. Since the buses do double runs currently, the options were to flip the runs, which would have elementary students catching the earlier bus in the darker and colder hours in the winter, and would cause significant childcare issues as families use older siblings to care for elementary school students after school, who would then become unavailable to them. An option was to separate the runs into two so that all schools could be scheduled close to the current elementary school times, which was estimated at costing about $1 million at that time. There was also athletic concerns noted at the end of the school would be considerably closer to some of the game times. As I see it, there seem to be three options. One, have the superintendent reconsider the issue from scratch. Two, assume that these same concerns still stand and have him just recost the single runs. Or three, opt to take no action until some significant outside change happens that affects this issue. I would appreciate your input in what people would like us as a committee to do, if that is the will of the committee.
So I was unaware that the school committee had discussed this before, which means that it's over 5 years old, and we have 2/3 of the committee new since that time. And obviously those are, those concerns remain in place, and they're huge obstacles. I do think the research on teen health and performance in schools as well supports the idea of at least examining the question as to what would be required. But obviously athletics is a huge hurdle at the high school, especially in the fall with dark arriving fairly early, and most of our competitors' schools starting their school day at 7:30 is around that time as well. So it was a question that I had as to whether or not it was something worth exploring.
Does anybody else have any thoughts?
I actually had a discussion with my child about this, my oldest, and he remembers jumping out of bed really easily in the elementary level, and I know he's one of the unique kids that really did appreciate getting up early in the morning and getting his day going. And I know the difficulties that some parents are faced with both at the high school and the elementary level to get the kids out the door in the morning. I can see two sides of this. I can see the need to make sure that the kids are at their best to be able to learn and to be effective in that learning. I can also see the challenges that we have with funding for another bus run, as well as we're struggling right now to get bus drivers to cover the routes that we have, and they're doing a double run. So when we do have issues, we're able to shift around thanks to the work that Kyle's been doing to make sure that we can get the coverage. I think it will cause a problem. I don't think it should be off the table, though, to have the discussion and possibly at some point in time revisit whether or not we can afford to put a second set of buses in there to be able to make this happen and what it would look like. But I feel like maybe at this point in time, given some of the comments that you made about the difficulties that were faced that were identified in the past, it might not be the right time to do it, but I do hope that we can have this discussion at a later point in time to try and maybe consider it when things make a change. I also was unaware of previous studies that were done. It was before my time as well. I didn't understand the impact and what else had already been brought up.
Having the shortages of buses and also, after-school care now is tough for parents because we can't even get enough after-school people to bring their kids for aftercare. So those two things are going to be a huge obstacle. They were back when we had this discussion. I mean, it was a long discussion, and we still have those challenges today. So is everybody in agreement that we'll table this till another time? Okay, the next item is evaluation of the superintendent. The Superintendent prepared the evidence for his goals, and those are attached to the agenda along with the survey link for your feedback on his evaluation. I would ask that you complete the feedback form by Friday, June 2nd, and we will consider the summary of those comments at the June meeting. Does anybody have any questions? And if at any time you have questions on that, you can just email myself or Narissa. Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report. In the superintendent's absent, I understand that Kyle will boldly go where no director of finance and operations has gone before. And if anybody has any questions on the superintendent's report, Kyle will be more than happy to answer any questions if anybody had any questions on his report.
When is Brian going to announce that people should be coming to Saturday's performance of the alumni musical happening on June 17th, where Brian will be taking center stage to perform? I don't see that he's notified the school committee of that yet.
And I believe it's a shared role. One of the evenings, Brian is the actor, and then the other evening, Principal Kelly shares that role as well.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, Principal Kelly will be on the Sunday 2 p.m. showing, where Brian will take the 7 p.m. Saturday night show. Both will be dancing. Neither has come to practice yet. Make sure you come and watch. They both will be the Dean of Harvard. The Dean of Harvard.
Any questions for Brian on Brian's replacement?
You can call me Brian.
Can I have a motion to receive and file the May 2023 Superintendent's Report as presented?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? No voiceover, nothing? All those in favor? The next item is the Universal School Meals Resolution, and I'm going to hand that to Paul Goldner.
On the mic. There's currently a House and Senate bill, so this would be Triton adopting that Project Bread resolution, which is there for you and has been nicely filled in the template with our own information and logo. But essentially, it's a resolution to transmit copies of the resolution to our representatives and the governor, calling on the state to provide school meals to all children.
I was here when me and Narissa were here for the project. Oh, sorry, Susanna, yes, you were there too. We were there, and it was the amount of people that showed up to be there for Sarah was incredible. And even the kids, when they were speaking to Project Bread as to how important meals were to them, I mean, they came up with different scenarios as to how having free meals has benefited them. So it was nice to see we had, 4 students that were talking about it. And it was just amazing to see all these people coming to help bring awareness to universal meals. Did you have something?
No, I was just going to add, too, that Commissioner Riley was here, which was nice to see. We had the representative from the school, DESE School Nutrition Program. The head of that program was here. A couple of regional directors from the U.S. Department of Agriculture were here. And it was just, I thought it was phenomenal. They had discussion in the cafeteria, and then it was the AP Law, I think, class that came in and actually did a sit-down roundtable discussion. Just like Linda said, phenomenal sharing of anecdotes and providing kind of their real-time feedback, answering questions that the students did really well. And then some of the people that showed up fanned out amongst the poor unsuspecting 8th grade lunch that I don't think even knew it was happening, and all of a sudden ended up with like USDA representatives at their table. And then the high school seniors that were part of that class also sat down with a number of the representatives that had come in as part of that. And then they all moved into the State House and met with legislators. And Sarah Littman, the food services director, just did a phenomenal amount of work around this. And she was telling me that when they found out that the Senate Ways and Means budget for this year did not include universal school meals, she immediately got on the phone with the food service director for Watertown and the food service director for Hamilton Wenham, who are apparently her like little action group, and they immediately came up with this beautiful one-pager that stated why it should be included, and then worked their contacts to make sure that that went out to senators. And just the amount of work that she's doing it's phenomenal. I mean, she is putting herself out there. I swear she's probably dreaming about it at night at this point because she's so passionate about it and so into it.
Yeah, she explained how important having universal healthcare, universal, I'm looking at Susanna and thinking healthcare. Universal meals will be so beneficial to just our Triton schools. It will help fund the program. It will allow her to purchase better food, and it allows her to give like the a la carte stuff, like the kids come in and are able to get their own salads, and they are able to get snacks for when they go to sports after school. So it's just amazing to hear everything that she's able to do with the extra money to fund this program. So hopefully they take it seriously that this is beneficial to all schools in Massachusetts, because it goes right to the kids. And it doesn't matter whether you can afford it or not with what food costs nowadays. I mean, even families that don't, are not able to get free and reduced lunch, this would be beneficial for them too. I mean, a lot of the kids were talking how they never have breakfast in the morning, that they're able to come here and get a grab-and-go breakfast, so it enables them to have food in the morning. And a lot of them are here early in the morning and then go to sports after school, so now they're able to get some snacks and stuff to bring along with them. So I believe Sarah did a phenomenal job in explaining how beneficial this is for everybody. Does anybody have any questions? I did sign the resolution, so.
I would just add, like, what I took from it as well was understanding the sort of trickle-down efficiencies that occur from having this program, what it does to a local community, a local economy, the ability to purchase new equipment that allows them to be able to not rely on processed foods, but to be able to make, well-sourced, locally sourced foods quicker and easier and, nutritionally, So I thought that was, a takeaway as well. That was really, it's not just about here's the amount of food, but the quality of food and the self-sustaining program that it can become and be was really impressive.
I think one of the reasons they're skeptical about giving universal meals is they're always afraid of how much waste there's going to be with food. So having this composting here at the high school would benefit that issue. Yeah. And I just want to say that some of the kids were talking about kale and how much they hated and didn't want kale, but Sarah has this recipe of kale chips, and they were just raving about the kale chips. And even some of the people who were walking around with us, they were all taking the little cups of kale chips, and they said that now they're making them at home. So this is allowing us to have the kids eat better food. Did you have a question, Paul?
I do. So Kyle, can you give us an idea of what the food service budget is at Triton ballpark?
Yeah, so around 1.5 million annually it's grown. 2 years ago, it was about $1 million, so it's grown 50% over the last 2 years based on the increase in participation.
Thank you.
And can I add to that too, that having sat on finance subcommittee, we always used to run in the red in this program, no matter how hard Lucinda tried when she was here, the very beginning of Sarah's tenure, it always ran in the red because we can't not feed students, and that budget also supports salaries, and that budget also supports equipment, and obviously with aging buildings, we had a lot of equipment failures, so when we were signing warrants, there would be freezers and dishwashers and all the stuff that had to be repaired, and that always came out of that budget. So we would actually end up, because it can't end up in the red at the end of the year, we would end up essentially often in a budget freeze so that we could take from other programs to make sure that the meals program ended up in the black. And that does not happen anymore.
I think when I first started, we closed out before free, so FY20, we closed out $67,000 of a operating deficit for that fund that we had to go through the process just like you described. And now, since that point in time, we've never had to face that challenge. Pretty powerful.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution in support of universal free school meals as recommended by the Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee as presented.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the MASC nominations, and I'll hand that to Paul Goldner as well.
Just, so every year, we look to see if there are any nominations for the MASC awards, and unfortunately, we had nominated Conley's Drugstore last year for all that they did for the district, and we're looking to renominate them again this year, but we're unable to because it was not this year, and so in that category, they didn't match up. But we are looking at nominating Joseph Perry this year for basically for the work that he's done and the way that he engaged with Triton in his time in the Rowley Select Board. We are currently in the midst of drafting that nomination, and if anyone has any other ideas, the document lists there who is eligible in the categories. We are open to receiving more requests for us to nominate in any category and writing up nominations and sending them in, because we always like to recognize our local partners. Anything else you wanted to add?
I was just going to say, I think if we're going to nominate Joe for Friend of Public Education tonight, or this year, we have to take the vote tonight because I believe they're due June 1st.
Oh,
if I remember correctly, so
not.
there's no meeting in between.
Yep, sorry, we hadn't.
Well, can we read, somebody from the,
I can read that.
yes.
Sorry, last year we hadn't had a committee vote, I think, so that's, so currently the draft reads, Joseph Perry is probably not the typical nominee for this category. While the Triton Regional School Committee knows him best as a former select board member for one of our 3 regional towns, Joe started advocating for students in the classroom as a teacher. He graduated from Salem State in 1965, and he taught middle school math first in Norwalk, Connecticut, and then in Marblehead, Massachusetts for the next 15 years. After his retirement, Joe's foray into local politics began when his wife and neighbors wrote him in for an open seat as a Rowley Public Library trustee. Before long, he was elected to the first of what would turn into 4 consecutive terms on the Rowley Select Board. In 2023, he decided not to run again when his last term expired so that he could experience actual retirement. His background and passion for education motivated him to work on many school initiatives for the town over the years. Joe is one of the town's representatives to the District Communication Commission, a group composed of select board members, finance committee members, and town manager and administrators from Triton's 3 towns, as well as school committee members and district administration that meets monthly during each school year. Despite his initial skepticism about the school committee's motivations for making changes to the regional agreement, Joe maintained an open mind and became one of the primary town architects on the amendments that were hammered out in that group over a 5-year period and passed at all 3 town meetings in 2021. Joe invested time in understanding the needs on the middle school, high school campus and presented them to his fellow select board members, resulting in support for school committee submittal of an MSBA core application in 2022 and again in 2023. Joe also relayed information between the boards and many annual budget discussions over the years. Joe would probably count as one of his biggest achievements the renovation of Pine Grove School, Rowley's elementary school. He was tireless in getting approvals through multiple town votes and chaired the building committee from 2016 until 2020, putting in probably over 100 hours in board meetings, community information sessions, and building tours. In some of the toughest moments, Joe's disarming chuckle would cut through the strained atmosphere and diffuse the tension. Pine Grove students will be passing the plaque with his name for many, many years to come as they enter their beautifully renovated school building.
Nicely done. I have a motion to approve the nomination of Joseph Perry for the MSc Friend of Public Education recognition as recommended by the Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee.
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
I didn't think anybody was going to make a motion.
Paul was looking at me and I was looking at him.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Well deserved.
Oh, boy.
The next item is the FY24 budget update. While having all 3 towns approve the annual budget is preferable, we do have an accepted budget with Newbury and Salisbury town meetings providing the 2 required approvals. I want to thank Kyle, Brian, Anna, and Shannon, and everyone else who was involved in the preparation and process this year. The budget is always an enormous undertaking with lots of moving parts, and I rarely appreciate all the work, especially the people around this table. It takes a lot of time and effort in really thinking about what's best for our 3 towns and our students. The next item is authorization to lease. Kyle Warren is going to walk through the new requirement for a vote on technology leases.
Yeah, so this was a new one that popped up. We have historically leased equipment costs, notably since the start of the pandemic, Chromebooks, but even prior to that, technology equipment is extremely expensive, so it's, for budgeting purposes, helpful to spread those costs over a few years. The company that we have historically used, American Capital, now has a requirement for municipalities where a vote is taken of the school committee or governing body to approve or authorize the district to enter into this lease. It's not a legal requirement, it's just a policy of this company. While we have historically used this lease financing company, we also did look at current market rates and the rates offered by other companies as well to make sure we are competitive. It's, like everybody knows, rough right now with interest rates. However, this was a competitive rate as part of this agreement. So we are proposing or requesting that you take a vote to allow the district to enter into a lease for the for Chromebooks, Chromeboxes, and laptops. The Chromebooks are for the rollout, the implementation plan that Mr. Kulick went over. So that was the $50,000 authorization in the FY24 budget. The Chromeboxes is the new name for Chromebases. So that's a refresh in each of the elementary schools. And then the laptops are the administrative laptops that we all use. And that's a refresh after that for the next cycle, essentially.
Can I have a motion to, is there any questions?
I'm just going to ask, do we have to do this every year then? Is this a new, like, since we're doing 1, 5, and 9, right, every year?
Yeah, so it is their current policy where any new lease that's entered into, we would have to take this vote.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for asking that.
Can I have a motion to authorize the district to award a contract to American Capital for the leasing of Chromebooks, Chromeboxes, and laptops for a term of 4 years, subject to an agreement as to the final contract terms, including but not limited to a master lease agreement.
I'll make the motion.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
The next item is subcommittee reports, policy and advocacy. Paul Goldner.
Okay. At our last meeting, we had a discussion about the Universal School Meals Resolution and the MASC nominations, but most of our time was spent discussing possibly moving forward with advertising with sports and other activities streaming. That will be coming forward at a future meeting when the superintendent is here as well. Our next meeting is currently scheduled for June 12th.
Thank you, Paul. The next is finance. Paul Mayette.
At our last meeting, we went through the audit review, which came back, no surprises, clean, and we are where we say we are, so we're in good shape there. It was also a decision made with the budgets that were put forward to give the 2.5% COLA to non-bargaining unit employees. That's coming out of the salary
Contingency line item.
Yes, thank you. So it does not affect the overall budget and did not require a vote, so that was that there. And we continue to push a little bit closer towards that that line of the end of the year and having the money there, but I'm assuming since then it's still clean.
Yeah, so the message that's been shared is that this year is real tight, right? Definitely fully extending the budget, and we aren't in a position where we'll have to dip into E&D. If we get in a little bit of a pickle, we do have other reserves available that we would potentially dip into a little bit, but not the process of old that knocked us on our credit rating where we are utilizing E&D to balance operations. So it's challenging, but getting there.
And our next meeting is next Thursday, no, 25th, thank you. Is that not, oh, no. May is not going as quickly as I thought it was, I apologize.
Thank you, Paul. Personnel and negotiations, Paul Lees.
Yeah, we haven't met since we negotiated the contracts with the TRTA and the IAs, and we don't presently have any meetings scheduled right now.
Thank you. Correspondence, one of our special education collaborators, NEC, sent the certified copy of their budget, which is attached to the agenda. It's just a notification. And the final is adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I just want to thank all of you. It says it's been a long year, and the budget's always tough, and it takes a village, and I appreciate everything that everybody does. All those in favor? Thank you, and have a nice night.